If we could come to order, please. We understand that Michael Gardner is on his way, but unfortunately, it's time, and so we move ahead. Time waits for no one. There are no public comments that I'm aware of. May I have a motion to approve the minutes of April 21st? Those in favor? Thank you. And there's no change to the work plan that I'm aware of, right?
That's right.
Okay. Our first topic are the agency-wide diversity outreach program activities. And the first slide is one that I'm going to save. Oh, no, that's fine.
This one.
The first slide we're going to save until Michael arrives. But if we can move right on to the outreach events, I see that Zaneta's here. So could you address those, please?
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. Okay. We've been pretty busy at the Office of Civil Rights with our outreach. For the past couple of months, we've picked up extensively on CERT applications coming in because of the many outreach events that we've been having in-house and out. With Mike Garner on, we have started a few forums, and the first one was held earlier this month, and it was specifically for the Minority Financial Services Networking Forum, where we were bringing in firms, banking firms, minority firms who can work in that type of arena, and we had the Director of Finance, Pat McCoy, come in and speak to them. We attended the New York, New Jersey Minority Supplier Diversity Council networking event shortly after. And later on you'll hear about the DBE goal-setting forum, of which we had quite a few firms this year attend that event. We have also, this week, we're going to also be attending the Comto Annual Dinner Cruise, which is an agency-related event. It's a networking cruise that a lot of hubs, DBEs, MWBEs participate in. We are, tomorrow is the Minority Business Development Procurement Matchmaker event that we'll be having, along with, we have also attended the National Minority Business Council, where Mike was a guest speaker, and we spoke about gave an overview of the program and its goals. In August, moving forward, we will be attending as always, the Hispanic Federation Chambers of Commerce, where we will target the Hispanic MWBE community. And we are now aggressively organizing the 16th Annual Competitive Edge Conference. This is our 16th year, and as an FYI, I can give you a little bit of what the Competitive Edge Conference is about. It's a conglomerate of city and state agencies looking to promote the contracting opportunities within the agencies, and it consists of MTA taking the lead this year as chair of the conference, and the other agencies that will be participating is New York State DOT, State Insurance, City of Small Businesses, the Port Authority, those agencies that have MWBE programs. Our program for the day will consist of Timothy Gilchrist, the senior advisor to Governor Patterson, coming in to speak about the opportunities within New York State. We will also be awarding awards to an MBE firm, a WBE award, and a firm who has excelled during the year in their contracting opportunities. This year, we will also have the agency-wide procurement reps participate, and we will set up appointments for the buyers and the procurement reps to have a one-on-one networking event, match them with the firms that will be attending this conference. The conference in the past has had about, I would say, over 300 attendees, and we hope to have the same thing this year. It will be held at the Sheraton, and you should be getting an invitation shortly. We would love to have you there. In September, we will be at the Regional Awards Luncheon supporting that organization. And to move on to the diversity program, We are now in the process of coordinating the events for the Harlem Week celebration. As you know, in the past, we always participate in the Harlem Week. It has now turned out to about 2 or 3 months, I think. So they celebrate all summer, and throughout the summer, we have a lot of events to include an economic development luncheon, a job fair, of which we are now going to be participating agency-wide, and several other events that take place, and the OCR is going to be taking a lead on participating with them. Diversity, before I go forward with diversity, though, I just wanted to mention that there is someone here from MTA Bus MTA Bus has picked up on their diversity events quite a bit to include a newsletter. And I wanted Eva Martinez, who will now be representing the Diversity Committee for MTA Bus, to speak on it.
The board members should have received a package, a green package from Eva.
I have additional packets here. If anyone needs one, I'll give you one. But thank you for inviting me to sit here today and speak to you. Vice Chair on the MTA Bus Diversity Committee. Jim Harding is the chair of the committee. I've been part of the MTA Bus Committee since its inception in 2007, early 2007. I'm one of the original members of the committee, so I've seen it grow very quickly, especially in the last year when we joined forces with Long Island Bus sometime in July 2008. So we went from about 6 solid members to 13 members. We basically hold 5 ceremonies throughout the year, highlighting different specific heritage depending on the month that we're in. And they're held at different depots throughout MTA Bus and now Long Island Bus. We honor employees who have gone above and beyond the normal course of the workday in volunteering their time in special charities or volunteering in community service. And during our ceremonies, we give them certificates from Governor Patterson's office in recognition for their service. So it's really nice, and we've recognized many people, and we highlight them in our diversity newsletter. Since joining Long Island Bus in this effort, we've expanded our program, especially in inviting special guests. And that's been a really unique part of our ceremony now, in addition to highlighting the employees. Our most memorable event was back in February for African American History, where we invited 2 Tuskegee Airmen, Mr. William Wheeler and Dabney Montgomery. They spoke on behalf of the African American celebration in history, and they brought with them their Congressional Gold Medal of Honor, and they held them up high, and that was such a touching moment. So, I mean, our ceremonies have become really something to be seen. We were also featured in Transit television program in June 2009, and they covered our Women's History celebration. At our ceremony, we honored we honored women throughout the company with 25 years or more of service to the company, and we had about 40 women, which was really, really nice. In addition, in order to reach out to as many employees as we can, we started this e-newsletter, and the purpose of that was because we did not have enough employees there that could join us, especially if we were moving it from depot to depot. And this has proven to be really positive. We got a lot of positive feedback from employees who are now going into their e-news, and they basically get the details of what they missed. So that's been a great move for us as a committee. And just in closing, I just want to mention that we are going to be participating in a multicultural day at Long Island Bus on September 18th, which they've had for many years now, and the diversity committees together will be participating in that and helping. And down the line, we have our Hispanic Heritage Celebration in MTA Bus. It'll be one of our depots in early October. And I, of course, want to welcome everyone to join us. So thank you.
Questions? I have a couple of things. Eva, if you email your newsletter to Darlene Slade,
Yes.
she has email addresses for most of this committee,
Okay.
and she can see that we get them, because I'd like to see them too.
Sure.
Secondly, I noticed that you mentioned that the Compto event, the dinner cruise is coming up, and I'd like to mention that Dwayne Sampson is here representing Compto. And lastly, we have other agency representatives here. I wanted to know if any of them have comments about what they're planning in the future that they'd like to make. I knew you did.
Good afternoon. I'm Gloria Colon from MTA Bridges and Tunnels. We begin our season in the fall. We go on hiatus for the summer months, and we'll begin in October. Our first event will be in honor of National Italian American Heritage Month, and we're calling it Italian Americans, A Story of Sacrifice and Success. And we'll have a speaker and a film that depicts the large wave from the 1920s on, which I think that you'll find very interesting. So hopefully you'll join us. That's October 15th at 2 Broadway, and we'll be sending out flyers. And the rest of the programs are still in formation, and so we'll get back to you with those details later. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Hi, Michael Fife, Long Island Railroad. The rest of our programs are currently in the planning phase as well. We are going to be having a Hispanic Heritage Month event probably within the first couple weeks of October, and then later on in the year we have our Diversity Day celebration, typically around early December. All right, so we'll send out invitations as the dates approach.
I just wanted to point out, going back to the Competitive Edge Conference, that we hold a lot of workshops, and we have 2 organizations that are in the audience right now that are working very closely in planning a couple of them, which is the Women's Builders Council, and they will be presenting a workshop on the new construction professional and bringing new initiatives from their perspective. And we also have Jamaica Business, which is also going to be working on the boundary capacity.
It's important for us to be able to team like that, because it brings all parties together, and it's really the most successful way we have of doing it. So I appreciate the fact that you're here. Well, Mr. Gardner is here, as you can see, so we will go back to the Office of Diversity Civil Rights 209 Department Goals, which is the first page. It's page number 7 in my book, but they're not always the same.
Thanks, Susan. I wanted to bring everybody up to speed with a lot of the things that we've been doing for the past 2 or 3 months since the last time that we met. As many of you know, that one of the biggest goals here is to get a system in place where we can retrieve adequate data and information. We're doing everything now from the standpoint of view of verbal and physical. And so basically our goal is to have a new data gathering system, MW, DBE, contract compliance system up in place and operating by January. And we are in the final stages right now with respect to hiring the firms to come in and work with us to make that happen. This training program is going to be essentially a program that is modeled after the SCA's training program. And the goal of that program is not only to train contractors how to become better contractors, but to train contractors how to do business the MTA way to ensure that our projects are done safely, timely, and on budget. And we are going to start that training program in September over a series of 12 Saturdays from 9 o'clock until 3 o'clock at 2 Broadway. And so there will be mass mailings going out sometime in the next month or so with respect to that item. Also, as you may know or as you may not know, the mentor and graduate mentor bill passed the state assembly in June, and it was in the state Senate. But we shelved it until September when this full Senate comes back into session, and we are very, very optimistic that that bill is going to pass in September. Once that bill passes, in the words of Bill Howell, the whole world changes. So we are very, very, very eager to get that bill passed, which then will allow us to create a surety bonding program, also a loan program. And if you look at the impediments, the lack of access to capital, lack of access to bonding, a lack of access to efficient training are three of the biggest impediments that prevent qualified MWDB firms from entering the marketplace. And so once that bill passes, we are very optimistic that our program is going to be as good or better as the SCA's program. We also are focused on not only establishing MWDB goals on our contracts, but monitoring and working with our contractors and enforcing those goals. Because when you have a certification process which leads to nowhere, then firms will not come. But if you build the stadium, they will come. And so it is our goal to maximize the inclusion of qualified MWDB firms and not to go through this process of a goal reduction or goal waivers. We are in business to maximize contract awards to qualified MWDB firms. We are also basically going through an exercise right now of meeting with all of the operating agencies to make sure that there's surety with respect to the goals, the outreach goals, the hiring goals and practices. So we're starting to meet with the EEO hiring people at each one of the agencies along with the EEO person there. And we all know that there are certain areas in which we can improve our hiring. And so we should be looking at this data and using that data as a tool to improve in those hiring focuses. And so we are having these meetings to make sure that our hiring practices are inclusive of every sector. What will go a very, very long way with that is to start recruiting in those areas in which there is a void with respect to our hiring practices, and we are going to talk about advertising in those areas in which we can improve upon that. And let me also say that the goal setting process and the contract, the MWDB contract monitoring process, is now one. So the same person who is in charge of the goal setting process is the same person who's now going to be monitoring the goals on each one of the projects and agencies that they are assigned to. So there are staff people who are now assigned to agencies. So the same person who's in charge of the goal setting process is also now in charge of the contract compliance monitoring process. Which, so if in fact a contractor is not reaching their goals, we are now calling in contractors and asking why and what we can do to assist them in reaching their goals. Thank you. These are the goals updates.
Well, I just want to add how important I think the training and mentoring programs are, because it builds confidence in the agencies to know that people who come in on our contracts have training that helps them to understand what you call the MTA way, which is a pretty stringent way in many respects. So it's a very good thing. We'll keep pushing it, and we need that legislation.
Right, exactly. Naeem? Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
Certification activities?
Yes, certification activities.
Good afternoon.
Hi, Carolyn.
Hi. When I last reported to you, it was for January and February of 2009, and this report's going to cover the period of March through June. As of February 28, 2009, we had 16 new applications pending review. During the period of March through June, we processed a total of 32 actions, and of course that takes into account new actions that were received. Of those 32 that were processed, 19 were certified, none were denied, 10 were returned, and 3 were deemed ineligible. During the same period, we received 45 new applications, which brings our applications pending as of June 30th, 2009 to 29. Zenaida had made mention to the fact that we have been receiving more and more applications as a result of the increased outreach activity, and I just wanted the committee to know that so far for the month of July alone, I've received 20 new applications.
What does returned mean again?
Okay, return means I sent it back, and I'm going to tell you why I returned each of the applications in a moment. Okay. Now, 10 seems like a large number, but out of those 10, 5 were returned because the firm was not certified in their home state. Under the federal regulations, in order to be DBE certified in New York, you must first be certified where your firm has its principal place of business. 5 firms submitted applications, and
That's general knowledge.
yeah, but they do it anyway. So 5 firms submitted applications. They were not certified in their home state, so we had to return it. We had 2 applications that came with just the application and no supporting documentation. And as you know, on the application, it lists all the documentation you must submit with it. Usually when an application comes in, if a few pieces are missing, it's fine. We take it and we ask them to provide the additional. However, if the application comes unaccompanied by anything, I just return it to the applicant. Yes.
Just out of curiosity, what's the average for when you do that, getting it back with all of the documentation?
Usually in a couple of weeks. Usually.
They don't just give up.
No, I've never had one who just gives up.
And the ones that aren't certified in their home state?
They usually come back after they've received certification in their home state. Sometimes they don't, but they usually do. I had one application that was returned because there was a death in the family. The person had to go to India, and they did not know when they were going to return. Because I have a time span in which I must process applications, I can't sit on it. So we sent it back with the note to him that as soon as he comes back, send it back, and we'll start the process again. I had one firm who had insufficient business history, and they were advised to submit later. What I mean by insufficient business history is the company had just started, there was nothing to look at, no tax returns, nothing. So primarily we were looking at a dream, okay? And then we had the final firm of the 10, which was under review by another certifying partner. It's still taking time for firms to understand that we're in a unified certification program and that an action by one certification partner is applicable to all. So this particular firm had an application under review by New York State DOT. I could not review it. So that's the 10 firms that were returned. I also had 3 firms that were deemed ineligible. Now, interestingly, 2 of the firms was owned by the same person, but both exceeded the size standard for a small business concern, so they are not eligible. And the third firm was the owner exceeded the personal net worth. As we know, to be eligible for DBE certification, the qualifying owner cannot have a personal net worth that exceeds $750,000, and this person had a personal net worth that exceeded $2 million.
Any other comments? You know, I'm thrilled to death to see the increase in the numbers, but we struggled to be sure that we cleared the backlog.
Right.
And now you're looking at having to clear a backlog, and I was happy to hear you say that you have a time frame in which you have to respond. So will you keep us posted on how that's going?
Absolutely, but I also want to say for the record it's going to be a struggle because I'm losing one person right now who is retiring, so that leaves me with 5. And because we undertake such a thorough review here at the MTA to make certain that only firms who are bona fide disadvantaged business enterprises certified, our review is thorough. So we cannot shortcut the process, we cannot compromise the integrity, but we are certainly going to strive to continue to process within the time frame established.
Let me add also that basically the time frame is going to be adhered to, but the new strategy that we have right now of having outreach and certification coordinated is resulting in a lot of new applications coming in. The outreach events, we're now getting cards. We're now bringing the cards back. There's a spreadsheet, and staffs are reaching out and assisting the firms in coming back. Going forth, I have a new focus that I will be able to talk about more at our October meeting, with respect to, that's going to address the large number of firms coming in.
Hi, good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, actually. A couple quick questions. In the book, it says that there are 16 applications pending review since February. Can you give me a breakdown of when they're not all 16 came in February and haven't been reviewed? I assume that they've been staggered over the last few months. So can you provide either now or later on 2 in February, 2 in March, 2 in April?
One of those charts, I think. It was on the next.
No, I don't have the new applications with me, but I can certainly do that.
That's
That's the termination type. No, out of those 16 that are pending review, I can certainly tell you when they came in, but I
Okay.
can't do it for you right now.
Great. And can you explain, I know you're losing a person, you indicated that, but what is actually the time frame that you've set for yourself for processing an application?
Our time frame is established by the regulations, so we have 90 days from the receipt of a complete application to process.
Okay. Okay, that's all for now. Thank you.
Sure. Can you go back to the one before that, please? Okay. This speaks to the type of determinations that were rendered. And it's nothing more than a compilation of what I said earlier, and that is the number of firms that were certified, the number that were deemed ineligible, and the number that were returned by month. Next one. All right. Now we're talking about the determinations by service area, because one of the things we look at is the type of firms that we're getting in. In total, we had 4 in the construction-related service area, 1 who was a crane and heavy equipment rental, 1 for cost estimating and project scheduling, 1 doing concrete work, and 1 providing project support services. We also received 4 certified 4 professional services, 1 architectural service and the other 3 civil engineering. Then we had 9, which just came, which is characterized as other, and that ran the gamut from management consulting to installation of transit vehicle equipment, communication services, etc. Very, very varied services. And we had 2 suppliers, 1 providing electrical apparatus and 1 providing industrial, mechanical, and electrical products. Thank you. You're welcome.
The next section is the annual program updates on EEO and Title VI, and I've asked Gwendolyn Harleston, who is the Assistant Director for EEO Compliance, to present this section.
Good afternoon. As Mr. Dinh has introduced me, I'll introduce myself once again. It's Gwendolyn Harleston. I'm an Assistant Director of EEO Compliance. The first slide, as you see, is basically just a disclaimer. I'll be using terms like underutilization or projected goals, but we don't want you to construe that as MTA or its agency discriminate against any employee, applicant, or the public. Next slide. Each year, MTA and its agencies conduct what we call a 2-factor availability analysis. And what that means is that they try to determine or estimate the availability of females and minorities within a reasonable recruitment area. People that are available to work in different positions. The way that they determine availability is that they use census data. What we do is pair up the position titles within each of the workforce by job group to census occupational codes, and they use internal availability data. Generally, this is your promotions and transfers. We then take the data and come up with what we call an estimated availability. The estimated availability is different at each of the agencies depending on their workforce. We then will determine the estimated availability for each of the job groups, for females and minorities, and then we take that and compare it to the estimated, what they should have, what the total that they're expected to have within a particular job group. If it's less than what the estimated availability calls for, then the agencies will establish what they call projected goals, where we have vacancies. Not all the time we might have underutilization in a particular job group, but we can't establish a goal or project a goal because we don't have vacancies. You also need to know that that can change depending on the economic conditions. As you know, earlier this year, we were in a hiring freeze. So that impacts the activity that the agencies will put forth to try and meet the goal. Next slide. This slide just basically shows you the projected goals for 2009. The way that these goals are established is we use the 2008 workforce, and then we speak to the budget department to try and get a list of the projected goals by the job group. As you can see, most of the projected goals are in females and Hispanics. They have been established for females and Hispanics. Next slide. After we determined that females and Hispanics were underrepresented, what we did was we met, and Mike spoke to this earlier, we met with the all MTA Recruitment and Sourcing Roundtable on June 4th to have a discussion or come up with some suggestions on how we can correct the underrepresentation. Some of the suggestions that were brought up during our discussion was to re-examine the job requirements for the positions in skilled craft and service maintenance job categories, which is our highest employee-based population. It represents 65% of the total workforce. We talked about targeting community and minority publications for advertising positions, which we sat down and sent out a list by county of the community newspapers that were available, not only, your minority-based newspapers. We talked about establishing the possibility of a diversity recruitment budget. A lot of the agencies spoke about how they have no control over the advertising budget. We also talked about extending partnership opportunities to community-based organizations and trade schools. And additionally, we talked about revising the outreach posters so that we can present MTA as one organization and post it in all of the transportation modes. I will report on Title VI. Title VI prohibits discrimination based on race, color, and national origin in the services, programs, and benefits provided by the transportation properties. On an annual basis, the MTA agencies will submit results of random samples of the services provided to the minority and low-income communities. Based on the FTA circular, Title VI circular, they can select one of the three options for monitoring whether or not if there are any inequities. The three methods are the level of service, the quality of service, and analysis of customer survey. Once they complete their analysis, most of the agencies will select all three because they want to look at their services to make sure that there are no inequities. We have probably just one agency, which is a relatively new agency that only uses the analysis of customer surveys. But all the other agencies will use all three methods. The level of service uses like the transportation indicators that are identified in the FTA circular, which are like your vehicle headway, which means how far apart do the buses or trains depart from the depots or the stations. The quality of service talks about the origin and destination travel time and the cost of the travel. And, yes?
Under your strategies to address underutilization, those were suggestions that you said people gave to you. Are you adopting all of those?
Well, we are in discussion on all of those. We are meeting, as Mike indicated earlier, with the recruiters from all the agencies, and the EEO and diversity representatives were part of that meeting, as well as the Office of Diversity and Civil Rights.
So you're going to settle on some of these, or you might actually do all of them?
We might be able to do all of them.
And is there a time frame for doing these?
Well, we had just started. That was our initial conversation with them in June. July, they usually don't meet during the summer, as everybody else seems to take a little break. But we have been continuing our discussions with them. Some of the things they're doing on their own, they're like re-examining the job requirements for the positions in skilled craft and service maintenance. That is something that they had already initiated when they came into the meeting. Like, I think it was Long Island Railroad had mentioned there was a lifting requirement of 120 pounds. Well, that could possibly screen out quite a few females. So they are going back to take a look at some of the job requirements.
And some males.
Well, yeah.
And the goal here, Andrew, is to make sure that our recruiting efforts are in sync with our EEO goals. So we are meeting with both the EEO persons at each one of the agencies as well as the HR recruiting persons to keep everything consistent.
Okay. You're welcome. So I'll continue with the Title VI. The analysis of customer surveys, that's the customer's perception of our service. It's only based on their opinion, and, you know, it's dependent on what day you call the customer, what time you call the customer, whether or not it will get, or whether or not they're very responsive. But as of this year, the annual... that too. Yes. But as of this year, we did not discover any disparities in the service provided to minorities and low-income communities. Okay, if there are any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them.
Any other questions?
Okay. You're welcome.
The next section is the MWDB program activities report, and if the chair will indulge me for a moment, you have seen in the past Mr. Muhammad Ali of our office present this information. Mr. Ali retired effective end of June, and if you... I beg your pardon?
And he moved upstate.
And he retired and he moved upstate. That is correct. So I just want to take a moment to thank him for his service. So if he's watching out there, I want to thank him. Moving on with the report, this is the report for first 3 months of this year. As Madam Chair, as you know, in the past we have presented this information on a 6-month basis and then on a yearly basis. But starting with this meeting, we are presenting this information on a 3-month basis. And looking at the 3 months of this year, the MTA and its constituent agencies awarded $1.3 billion in third-party contracts. Of those contracts, about $337 million were federally funded contracts, and about $1 billion were state-funded contracts. And on the federal side, a total of $46 million was awarded to DBE firms, which brings the participation rate to about 14%, 13.65%, just looking at the 3 months. And on the state side, MTA and its constituent agencies awarded $56 million in contracts to MWBE firms, and which brings the participation rate to about 6%, 5.6%.
So,
and just want to show you, this is the chart that gives the information that I gave you earlier.
why is the percentage so much higher on federally funded jobs than on state-funded jobs? Are the requirements different?
Well, certainly the program requirements are different, but this just happens to be how the contracts are awarded. They are not awarded on an even rate. Sometimes you will have contracts awarded in 3 months, and then next few months you won't have any contracts awarded, and then you may have contracts awarded at the end of the period. So I think it's best to have...
I was speaking of the percentage.
Right, and that's because the federal...
Time would affect the percentage? Oh, I guess it would, yeah.
I beg your pardon?
Yeah. Nothing, I understand it now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure. You're welcome.
But it is good news for us to see these numbers.
Yes, and I just want to point out on this chart, if you look on the first line, which is the federally funded contracts, as you know, the federally funded contracts, not wholly federally funded, there is some non-federal money in it also. And if you were to look at the purely federal share of those contracts and look at the percentage, that brings the percentage up to 21%, looking wholly at the federal share. But if you look at the contract as a whole, which has federal and state money, then the percentage is at 13.65%.
Excuse me.
Go ahead, John.
Can you go back a slide? Right. And maybe I'm just reading more into it than there is, but is there a difference between a DBE firm and an MWBE firm?
Certainly.
Yeah.
Okay. And can you report on the federal side, $46 million was awarded to DBE firms. Were none of the contracts awarded to MWBE firms?
Well, I'm reporting it separately because there are separate programs, parallel programs, if you will. There are federal regulations which state how firms should be certified as a DBE firm, and then and then we set goals on contracts which are federally funded. There are contract-specific goals, and there are overall goals, which I'll talk about in a moment about the federal overall goal. There are contract-specific goals, and if the contract is funded by federal money, then we would set a goal in accordance with federal regulations for DBE participation. And there are DBE participation goals, and a firm cannot get credit for being part of it.
I guess maybe I'm asking a different question. Is this just nomenclature in that DBE is the federal term?
Yes,
for-
that's the federal term. It's called Disadvantaged Business Program. The federal...
And so, although that's what it's called on the federal level, on the state level, we would call a DBE here an MWBE. Is that?
No,
No, the DBE program is a federal program, and the M&W program is a state program. And so for those projects in which we use federal dollars, the DBE goals are set.
So it's the same population, they just have different names.
It may be same
It
population.
may be, it may not be.
Well, then my question about the percentages would be very different anyway.
I guess what I'm trying to understand is there a subset of the federal portion that goes to MWBE and was nothing awarded there, or you didn't report on it because it was so small? No? Okay.
No. Let me see.
And I'm sorry for
No,
belaboring this.
no, that's quite all right. Let me put it this way. There are some firms which are certified as DBEs because they've gone through the federal program, and they've been reviewed, and we certified them under the federal program. They're called DBEs. Same firms may also be certified by the state. The states
Stick with the Fed for a second.
Okay.
So the Fed has a certification for DBE, right?
Right. And then we certify. That's Carolyn reported
Understood.
already.
But is there also a certification for MWBE on the
Yes,
federal
it is.
level?
Not on
No,
the state.
on the
That's the
state
state.
level.
Okay, so it is nomenclature. You cannot.
That's the...
Well, it is and it isn't.
Let me
say, well, yeah, it's both. DBE is a federal program.
Yes, and the
And
term...
it includes a certain groups of firms, right? Would qualify for DBE.
Yes.
And then other firms, then we have the MWBE program. That's the state program.
Right.
Certain firms will qualify for that program.
And the
but
same
criteria is different, but they overlap.
Yeah, the criteria is different, but
Is that right?
if I'm a
That's how
firm,
I see it.
let's say if I'm a firm, I'm in
Right.
business,
Right.
I can come to the MTA and be certified as a DBE.
Right.
I can also go to the state and be certified as an MBE, but if it's a woman-owned firm, that woman-owned firm can also come to us and be certified as a DBE, and the same woman-owned firm can go to the state and be certified as a WB. The state makes a distinction between MBE and a WBE. In the federal level, we don't make a distinction.
So, again, I think what you're saying is the federal certification is a broader category which captures disadvantaged business enterprises.
I wouldn't say broader category. I mean, there are different criteria for to be certified. But the federal program, you're not certified as a woman-owned business or a minority-owned business. You're certified as a disadvantaged business, so you're a DBE.
Based upon the net worth value of your company.
Right.
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 Size.
So whether you're disadvantaged physically or by your ethnicity, at
Right.
the federal level, once
Or
you're
by
certified-
gender. Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Right. You're disadvantaged.
Right.
Right.
But when I asked whether or not there's a disadvantaged certification on the state level,
Yes, it's called an MWBE program.
so it is the same universe, just different.
It might be or might not be. Some firms are certified as a DBE.
Let me
and
take a stab at this.
All right.
You know, on the state level, on the state level, it is not based upon size in as much as is based upon the ownership and control of the entity who is seeking certification.
Okay. I'm still confused.
I mean, there.
Yes, the feds do. What the state does not have a net worth cap.
Okay, I've wasted enough of everybody's time.
No, it's fine. It's fine.
Not at
It's
all.
fine.
Very good.
The bottom line is you can be a WBE and not be a DBE,
Right.
okay?
Right.
Because
Right.
there are different characteristics.
then
So
it-
it is a slightly
But
different
on-
population.
But on the state level, you could be an MWBE and a DBE.
No.
No,
They don't
no.
have DBEs in the
Right, in the state level, they
The
don't.
state does not use that.
That term,
or
state does-
The state's
Or
criteria
that
is always
program.
MWBE. Either you qualify, you
But
don't.
it could be the population, but it doesn't have to be the same.
Right. Okay.
So some firms are DBEs and MWBEs, and some firms
That's
only
state and
DBEs.
federal. So I
Yeah,
guess
right.
So
So
I'm
you can
trying to
be.
understand if anybody was left out of either of these two state numbers or federal numbers? And it seems the answer is no. This captured all groups. It's just a matter of their certification.
No.
It's more complex than that, because
Obviously.
they're really two different programs, and we're tracking two different things.
I got it. State program and federal.
Federal program,
Uh-huh.
right.
So you
One's
might
called
have,
DBE, one's called
MWE.
MWE.
Right.
Say-
I got that part, right?
okay, let's pretend that I'm a WBE, but I'm not a DBE,
Right.
okay? And then,
So you couldn't get any federal money. I got that, right?
I could get the federal money, but
But not under that program,
but
right? You're not certified
MTA
for it.
wouldn't record that as a
Right, it's not a-
WBE. I wouldn't be a WBE on that.
I mean,
So are you counted under both categories here?
No. No.
So you're either one or the other.
Right.
They can't count the money for both programs.
No.
No.
We can't get that.
Did we get that right?
Yes. Yes, we can't count money in both programs. No.
Something that I once understood.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, me too. I thought I understood it.
Okay, never mind. We can go on. Thanks.
the separate programs,
this
and some
actually-
firms can be DBs, some can be
If we let
MWBs,
him-
and
if we let him go ahead,
Okay, go ahead.
become
Yeah,
clear.
yeah.
I could say that. Okay.
Shall we try to set some goals?
Oh, before again, and by the way, congratulations on you're reaching the, I guess it's 7.6% thus far. I know it's only a quarter snapshot, but you know, it's good work in a time when it's really important. So congratulations.
Thank you.
The next section talks about the overall annual goal-setting methodology. And there are annual goals, overall goals, and there are contract-specific goals.
Be worthy of that.
The overall goal is, for the federal program, is we are required to set an overall goal. Actually, agencies which receive, which expect to award contracts with federal funds, contracts exceeding $250,000 in a federal fiscal year are required to set an overall goal. And there are the DB program requirements, and there is a goal-setting methodology, which is spelled out in the regulations. We are required to establish an overall DB goal. We'll talk about some factors that might impact DB availability, because you're supposed to consider DB availability when you set an overall goal. There might be barriers, other issues towards the availability of DBEs, and then there is a certification program that I will briefly talk about as well. We're required to advertise our goal. We're supposed to have informal meetings with the advocates, DB community, and the non-DB community. We placed our goal on annual overall goal on the MTA website. We've advertised in the local media, some minority on papers, as well as in general circulation media. There is a requirement for a 45-day comment period that can be filed with the MTA and the FTA, and there is an August 1st deadline for filing the goal with the Federal Transit Administration. There are DB program requirements. I'll give you a brief program overview. In order to establish a goal, we're supposed to first have a baseline data gathering system, and we would use things such as the bidders list. And there are DB goals, as I said, annual goals and contract-specific goals, as well as we are required under the federal regulations to use race-neutral as well as race-conscious measures. The race-conscious measure would be when we set a goal for the requirement of DB participation in a contract. Race-neutral means of achieving the goal would be that there is no specific goal for DB participation, but there happen to be DB participation on the contract. That participation by a DB on the contract is considered a race-neutral method of achieving the goal. Also, let's say we set a 15% goal on a specific contract, but the actual DB participation happened to be 20%, so that 5% would be a race-neutral participation. The program speaks about waivers, and it also states that there is supposed to be no quotas or set-asides. And we're required to count DB participation and report it to the FTA twice a year. And as I said before, the DB certification, and there's uniform certification program that I will talk about briefly in a few minutes. This chart gives us the federally funded contract award activity for federal fiscal years 2005 through 2008, the FTA value of awards, the number of awards which were made in the DBE dollars, which were subcontracts were awarded and prime contracts awarded, as well as the number of DBE awards made for a particular federal fiscal year. The average for these years for DBE dollar is award participation is 16.5%. There are, as I said before, DBE program requirements on the federal level. There is federal regulation 49 CFR Part 26, which requires agencies first to establish a level playing field for expected DBE participation, and it states that the goal must be clearly tied to local market evidence. And recipients can use flexibility to set goals based on the market conditions, and the regulations state that there is no set-aside. So initially, we have to establish a baseline data. The creating and maintaining a bidders list is one way to look at the baseline assist data. The bidders list includes firms who bid on prime contracts and on subcontracts. It has a firm's name, address, and status, whether it's a DB or non-DB, the age of the firm, as well as what's its annual gross receipts. So in establishing an overall goal, we would first establish a baseline, which in order to establish a baseline, you look at DB directories, you look at bidders lists, may look at disparity studies to see how they have viewed the market conditions, or you can look at the other recipient's goal. Second step after you establish a baseline figure is to adjust the baseline figure to account for the evidence, including local market conditions, and determine how many firms are actually ready, willing, and able to justify using use of any local disparity studies. There haven't been one recently. And we account for differences in local program if you're using and look at other recipients' goal and look at other evidence of DBE participation, availability, whether any financing, bonding, insurance requirements, ability of DBE firms, and their ability to grow or compete. So what we did was we identified proposed federally assisted contract for all agencies, and it was projected that there would be about $2.1 billion in federally assisted contracts for the upcoming federal fiscal year. Then we broke down activity done by the SIC and the standard industrial classification codes, or the North American industrial classification codes. These are the codes that state, for instance, how many firms are there which will be in general contracting or special trades and architectural engineering. So you look at how many contracts you expect to award in those areas, and then you look at, well, how many firms are there, DBEs, firms who can work in those type of contracts, on those types of contracts, and what's the dollar amounts which will be we expect to award for those types of contracts. So in order to look at the availability, we looked at the DBE directory at the MTA, and as well as the New York State Uniform Certification Program directory for the 14 counties service area, as well as the Empire State Development Corporation directory for the same 14 counties service area. You also look at the non-DBEs, the general firms who are not DBEs, and for the you're supposed to use the most current data, and the most current data that we have is the 2006 U.S. Census data, which came out in 2008. And then the availability that you calculate has to be weighted. In other words, if you have to look at see how many contracts you expect to award, and so how many dollars you expect to award for the general contracting or special trades, architectural engineers, business services, and you look at, well, how many firms are available in those areas, divided by how many DBEs are in that area, divided by general firms in that area. You're also required to adjust your base figure. And in order to adjust the base figure, we look at historical data on past participation of DBEs, their ability to come to work as prime or as sub. Most of the contract that awarded to DBEs are subcontract. They work as subcontractors, and very few of them actually work as prime contractors. We look at any effects of past discrimination, and as I said before, the level of allocation of current federal funding. And I talked about previous disparity studies, that just to look at how they treat market conditions. So we came up with a base figure of 16.65%. We looked at our past average of DB participation for federal fiscal years 2005 through 2008, and we averaged about 16.5% DB participation on federally assisted contracts. And looking ahead to the federal fiscal year 2010, we projected that in most of the work will be in general construction and special trades. And looking at past participation and the type of contract we expect to award, we adjusted the base figure by 0.39%, which brings the proposed level, proposed DB goal for federal fiscal year 2010 to 17%, which is the same goal as it was last year.
So the goal is consistent as last year, as is going to be the next fiscal year.
And as mentioned before, there are race neutral as well as race conscious measures, which the federal regulations require you to have. You're supposed to have both measures in order to achieve your goal. And race neutral measures would be that you don't set specific goals on contract for DB participation, but you prioritize your outreach and technical assistance efforts. You use race neutral measures to the full extent possible. And once the race-neutral measures become more effective, then the federal regulations say that you're supposed to have fewer contract goals. And you separately track DB participation contracts with goals and those without goals. Race-conscious measures are when you actually set a goal. We'll say that on this particular contract, DB participation, we expect to be, we measure it would be about 10% or 15%. And I said before, the overall goal is 17%, which doesn't mean that each contract with federal funds will have a DB goal of 17%. The individual contracts may have different goals. The goals may be as high as 20% or maybe as low as 5%. But the 17% goal is that overall, at the end of the day, we expect when you measure all of your contracts, you take them all together and say, well, how much was the DB participation? The overall annual goal is for, if you look at all the contracts, whether you had goals or didn't have goals, and that percentage should be about 17%. That's our goal.
So I'm still new to this also. I know it's a lot of information, but this goal setting process is mandated by the Fed, so we go through it every year. The goal is based upon the available firms in the marketplace that can come in and do your work on your projects. So that's how the goal setting process is in fact done.
And as I said, the race conscious is when you actually set a goal, and it's the federal regulations say that you use them only as necessary to reach your overall goal, and that regulations don't require a goal in each and every contract, and they state that you must emphasize good faith efforts and waivers.
Any questions? I know it's a lot of information.
Do you have any questions about the goal setting? In order for this goal to be set, we have to approve this and pass it on for the approval of the full board on Wednesday. The goal has to be set by us prior to August 1st, so we're a little tight on the schedule. Could I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second? Those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. We'll take it to the board.
Okay, I'm going to say it right.
I had a few more slides.
I know.
Okay, all right.
As long as they didn't have any questions.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Yes, we have.
Every year.
Every year you go through this.
Okay, thank you.
And every year?
Yes.
Even if there's no change?
Yes.
It's a reauthorization.
Did you have a higher goal?
Yes. We've had lower goals. We've had lower goals proposed, and we've overruled that in the past as well.
I mean, yeah, I'm fine with the 70%. It just seems coincidental that we're averaging about 16.5%, you said, more or less?
Yes.
It might be time to look at a higher goal to set a threshold that's a little bit more of a challenge for us.
The part of the difficulty here is that the federal process also dictates on how we set the goal. And the actual goal, if we use just the plain process, would be 16.61%. So we've upped it a little. I'm hoping that what we see happen is that we exceed our goal. And if we exceed our goal, then the goal-setting process is easier for us to set higher and higher. So yes, it's like MDVF with people. But I think we're on the right track, and I'm hoping that we can move along that line, but I think this is the right thing to do at this time.
I just wanted to add that we do submit our goal to the Federal Transit Administration. They don't approve the goal, but they look at the goal-setting methodology, and that's what they approve, review and approve. They don't actually approve the goal, but they see how you arrived at the goal.
Which is why it's really important for us to follow the right process, because they won't disapprove our goal, but they might disapprove of the way we implemented their process.
So in fact, what you're telling me, the only way to up the goal is to have more success.
Right.
Yes, and it also,
If we had
I mean, we
more
can't set a goal
minority
outside of the
contractors.
process.
right. I
Right.
mean, you have to have more DBs available. You have to have more money going to certain contracts. It's like a sort of formula that you put your figures in.
No, but I guess what it might, the epiphany I'm having is that we might want to set a goal of 25%. It's meaningless because the formula would only dictate that we could set a goal of 17%.
It would be questioned, but you have to look at this program in a totality. Part of the reason we want the mentoring program, part of the reason we want the training program
To have success.
is to expand the numbers of our contractors, so it all goes together to achieve the goal that we're looking for.
Right.
I mean, we can have a higher goal, but we have to be able to justify it.
Right, and I guess what I'm saying is we can't justify it until we
Under-
achieve those other.
Right, and if the firms are not in the marketplace, because
Right.
because the DBE program, I'm seeing that there's a lot of DBEs, but there also are not many DBEs in this marketplace that have bonding, that have capital, that you can navigate into the marketplace. And so once the mentor concept is set in place, in the next 2 or 3 years when we start building a larger pool of qualified firms, DBEs, so we can usher into the marketplace, then the goal-setting process can be up and increase, because now you have a larger base of firms who you can navigate and who are market ready.
Do those capital and bonding requirements also extend to the professional services in addition to sort of quote unquote the hard services that we typically give most of our money to?
Not the bonding, the capital, yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Because that's an area where we've not had great success, is some
Well,
of the professional service
it's-
areas.
That's why the surety program that we're working on, we're hoping will help us with this. When we talk to the minority contractors, one of the issues we heard about was how difficult it was to meet our contract requirements. But unfortunately, many of our contract requirements are passed on to us. So since we couldn't get much slack that way, what we're trying to do is help our minority contractors, or other contractors too, any contractor, to meet our requirements. And hopefully in the end we'll do both, because we also have people trying to lobby to get our contract requirements changed. That didn't sound too good.
Thank you.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I
That's
did
quite all
want
right.
that done.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Nieves Sali. I'm the Deputy Director also from OCR. I am in charge of the contract integrity monitoring process, and like Mike had said earlier, we had combined the goal-setting process with the contract integrity monitoring process, which means that the manager who is setting the goal will also be the one who is going to be monitoring the contract throughout the life of that contract. On the first slide, we have this, that we have an inventory for the first quarter of 844 contracts that we are monitoring.
Wow.
The second slide is of these contracts that we are monitoring, we have a total number of subcontracts of 3,023, which comprise of 954 individual subcontractors. And for the first quarter of 2009, the original subcontract amount of these contracts that we are monitoring is over 1.8 billion, and the current subcontract amount of that is over 2 billion. By agency, these contracts are divided into the participation by agency is New York City Transit has the highest participation, which is 42%, followed by BNT with 18.9%, MNR with 13%, Long Island Railroad 13% too, and MTA 9.7, MTA Capital Construction 1.5, and Long Island Bus 0.83%. The prime contract's original amount of these contracts that we are monitoring is $16.2 billion dollars, and the MWDBE subcontract's original amount is $1.9 billion dollars. We have on the next slide, we have there how we had it from the second quarter of 2008 to the first quarter of 2009. As previously reported, we had in the last slide we had 16.2 billion for prime contracts, and then of those we have MWDBE subcontracts of 1.9 billion with a total percentage of 11.5%. The next slide is we are reporting on the total payments to the MWDBE subcontractors. These are the amounts of payments that are reported by the prime in their monthly participation reports. You know that the prime has to report every month we call this the DBE progress report or the MWBE progress report. Every month they have to report what they have paid their subcontractors, and these are the numbers that we got from them for the first quarter of 2009. We have reported by the prime as being paid to the subcontractors $49 million. As you are aware, this contract integrity monitoring function was, we were with corporate compliance in last year, and then we were kind of transferred to OCR in February 2009. And then with this transfer in contract monitoring to OCR, with Mike's initiative, like I said, this goal-setting process has been combined with the contract monitoring process also. We have 10 compliance managers doing the monitoring. We have around more than 800 contracts that we are monitoring right now, and we are doing this manually. So we are hoping that with the computer system that Mike is hopes to be in 2010, we're hoping that we can really monitor these contracts really, really religiously.
Do you have any questions? You know, for Ira's benefit, we had a computer program that failed some time ago, and so we've been looking at getting this computerized again. Keeping these records by hand is outrageous.
Yes, it is.
We were
right.
hoping for the beginning of
January.
Any other issues? Thanks to everyone.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Could I have a motion to adjourn? Those in favor? Thank you very much.